Hi, it's me, Dan Wynn, your guitar dummy. Why I call this Guitar for Dummies, peer tutoring. And welcome to episode 3. Just 3? No, sorry, episode 4. Losing count. We're running out of fingers here pretty soon. This is, we're going to go a little deeper on the caged chords. It's something I teased in my video on intro to chords. And I didn't go very deep in it. I just kind of briefly introduce the idea in order to explain why we play the F sharp major, as I said, the way we do, because it's really an E-shaped chord barred. Now we're going to talk more about this whole idea of caged. So, as I mentioned briefly in that video, caged is how we describe the fact there are 5 open chord shapes, C, A, G, E, and D. And while that makes a useful mnemonic device to call them caged, it's not the only reason why we speak of them as caged. We could have called aged C or something like that, if that's all it was. But there's actually another logic to it, and that is you can play any of these major chords in any of these shapes, but the way those shapes appear on the fretboard is in that order. Let me demonstrate to illustrate this idea. So here's your C major, right? You might recall I told you you would put your ring finger here on the 3rd fret of the A string, your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the D string, and your index finger on the 1st fret of the B string, and play everything else open. There you have a C major. Well, there's 4 other ways you can play a C major chord on your guitar. And they fall up the fretboard in the order of caged. So there was your C shape. Well, there's an A shape as well. Now remember I demonstrated briefly that here's your A major chord. This is where you're playing your A string open, and then you can have your middle finger fretting your D and your G string at the 2nd fret, and then use your ring finger to fret the B string at the 2nd fret. Well, you can do that a little bit differently because you can use your index finger to bar. So if you were to bar at the 3rd fret, so you want to start at the A string in the 3rd fret, but allow your finger to touch your E string to mute it, because you don't want it ringing out on an A-shaped bar chord. And then you could use either one finger or multiple fingers to bar these others in that same A shape. Now I have a lot of difficulty doing this in a way that makes all the strings ring out nice and clear. That's why I don't use this shape very often myself. Some people have a really flexible finger that they can use that one finger and still allow that high E string to ring out. I'm not one of them. But this is how it is done. Okay? This is how you do an A-shaped C major. Notice how you have basically the same tones. Okay? It's not pretty. Again, I'm not. This is why I don't do this for a living, because I would starve to death. But there's your A-shaped C major. So you have a C and you have your A shape of the C major chord. Well, if you come up here and you bar at the 5th fret, and now you might recall I showed you the G major, which in this position you're going to use your. I told you had an option of either using your index finger at the 2nd fret of the A and your middle finger on the 3rd fret of the E, and then your pinky on the high E 3rd fret. Or you could use your ring finger on the 3rd fret of the low E, and your middle finger at the 2nd fret of the A rather. Well, in this illustration, when we're using this shape in a bar, you lose that option because you have to use your index finger for the bar. So in the C major chord, you can move this whole shape up here to where now you're fretting your E strings at the 8th fret and you're barring at the 5th. So you have C major here, you got a C major here, and you have a C major here, C, A, G. There you go. Well, if C, A, and G, what's going to be next? Cage, C, A, G, E. Well, here if you bar at the 8th fret, you make that same shape that I showed you for the F major. There we go. Helps me get it right. But move that whole thing up here to the 8th fret. Right? There it is. Sound familiar? Yeah, you got that. Here, C, A, G, E. Now the D is a little bit of a cheat. Unless I'm completely doing it wrong, which is possible. But the D shape, I'm only going to be playing these last 3 strings, because it just says you have a D major here, where you put your middle finger on the 2nd fret of the high E, your index finger on the 2nd fret of the G, and then your middle finger, your ring finger, on the 3rd fret of the B. There's your D major. Well, if you move that whole thing up here to the 12th fret with your ring finger on the 13th fret of the B, there you have that C again. Now the reason why I don't do more strings is because basically if you incorporate more strings into the shape, you're basically back to a C. Which I can kind of hardly do on this guitar. The Taylor A5, you kind of run out of room up here. Plus, why do that when you do that down here, right? But the point is, all 5 of those shapes. C, A, G, E, and D. C major chord, 5 different ways. And you can do this with any major chord. It doesn't matter. Pick a letter from A to G. Well, let's do that. Let's start with A, right? Well, as I demonstrated earlier, you have your A major down here, right? There's your A shape, A major, A shape. What will be next? G shape, right? Well, if G was on within this first position here, and you maybe recall from my lesson on intervals and scales, which if you haven't seen that, you should go back and look at it. The difference between a G and an A is 1 full tone, which translates to 2 frets on a guitar. So you would take this G that you had here, you would bar on the 2nd fret, and everything that you were doing is moving up 2 frets. So you have A in the A shape, you can tell I don't do this very often. A in the G shape. Right? Well, if A, G, next would be E, right? So come up here to the 5th fret and do everything that you were doing in the 1st fret for an F major. Up to the 5th fret, you've got an A. And then you come up here to the 9th fret and put your D shape down. And then barring on the 9th fret, you can come back to your C shape. Because it starts all over again. After you get to the D, you pick it up at the C. And then you could do the A shape up here again in the octave position. So that C, A, G, E, D is just continuous. If you have a long enough guitar, you can do that as many times over as you've got frets. So that was the A in each of the positions, which obviously you start in its root position. So let's talk about that with the G. We see this is your G in the root position. Well, if you come up here, that's the G shape as well. Come to the 3rd fret with your E shape, and you have a G. You come up here to the 7th fret with your D shape, and also bar the 7th fret to get your C shape. And then you come back up here to your bar is at the 10th fret, and your A shape is at the 12th fret. You have your G, and you're right back to that original, which there's no way my fingers are flexible enough to really play a bar G shape on the 13th fret, the 12th fret in the octave. But you get the idea. G, E, D, C, A, G on the way up. What about the E chord, right? Well, you have it down here, and this is the one position where you can play it with these 3 fingers, because once you start moving up, you need your index finger to bar. So if you know you're going right from an E major chord in the open position to a barred chord, you may want to play it. Get in the habit of not playing it using your index finger, so it's easier to transition. Let me give you an example. So in the key of E, your major chords are E, and B. Okay? Well, if you're going from here to a B, which happens quite often in a lot of different popular songs, it's easier to transition if you have your index finger not tied up doing that. But hey, if you can do it, you can do it. That's fine. Either way is okay. But getting back to the CAGED idea. So here's your E in the open position is E shape. We can take that D shape and set it down here on the 4th fret, and then bar the 4th fret to make your C shape. Because now we're starting over again, right? We did the E, D, now we're at the C. And then come up here, bar the 7th and play at the 9th fret for your A shape. And then you can, at the 12th fret, you finger with your finger at the 3rd fret for the open G, the G shape of the E. And then we're back to the E shape in the octave position up here. Yeah, you can tell I don't play these often. They're not ringing out. I'm demonstrating these things for a purpose. We're going to come back to this again later when I start talking about a little bit more advanced scales, scale shapes, scale patterns. They kind of follow the same idea, but that's just a teaser. We'll actually get into that in another video. So we've gone through C, A, G, and E. Might as well go through D. So here's your D major in the open position, right? It's the only one where you're going to bring out most of your strings. You want to mute the low E, except in some other circumstances, which we won't get into right now. But here's your D. So that's the last letter in CAGED. That means the next shape we're going to look at, of course, will be the C. So we take that C shape and bar on the 2nd fret. There's your C. So now we can come up here, barring the 5th and playing your A shape on the 7th fret. Right? And then we can come up here to and move that 10th shape, that G shape, where we're barring at the 9th fret and we're fretting at the 12th and 11th. Right? And then we come up to the 10th fret bar with the E shape. And then we can do the D again at the octave position. So there you have it. You have the C, A, G, E, and D chords played in the C, A, G, E, and D shapes. It's really kind of neat. It gives you a lot of options. And by the way, you're not limited to these no sharps, no flats scenario for this whole idea. Let me demonstrate. What if somebody says, we're going to play this song in B flat? Well, we can play the B flat. At the lowest position is barring at the, now B flat is just 1/2 a step above the A. So we're going to take everything we just did with the A and move it up 1 fret. So we've got the A shape down here. We're barring the 1st fret, right? Or we can play it up here. We're going to try to bar at the 3rd fret while this is where when the frets are really spread out. You better have flexible fingers to be able to do this, right? But here's your G shape. And then we come here to the 6th fret and bar it to get the E shape. And we come up here to the 10th and 11th fret to give the D shape. And we could also bar at the 11th and play a C shape. Again, I don't know you'll ever play these chords in these shapes at these different positions, but knowing where they are and what notes are there is going to come in handy later. Trust me on that. And that's something, personally, I've been playing for 40 years, and that's an idea I just learned recently myself. So you can learn fast by taking a lot of courses and maybe even going for a degree in music performance. If you have time for that, hey, go for it. You'll be ahead of me after the end of your first semester. Or you could take it slow like I did, like, learning from, I took a couple classes in elementary school and middle school and then quit and then kind of self-taught myself the chords out of books. And then had to wait, 20 years for the internet to get invented so I could start learning from people putting stuff up online. How you learn and how fast you learn is entirely up to you. But I'm trying to make my own little contribution here. So there you go. To recap, 5 chords, C, A, G, E, and D. Each one can be played in the C, A, G, E, and D shape, and that is the order they fall on the fretboard going up. even if they don't start at C. If they start at D, then you next one up is C. Your D, you call it decaged. If it starts at G, you can call it caged, whatever. The point is they continue up the fretboard in that same order all the time, and it can be applied to any key. So, look forward to seeing you back here again. Make sure you click like and subscribe, and click that bell icon to get notifications when I post new materials. And be sure and post questions in the comments. Oh, speaking of the comments section, or actually the other stuff below the screen here, I'm also posting some diagrams that will help see what this kind of looks like on the fretboard, just simply using dots. I didn't put any numbers on those dots to indicate your fingers. I did cover that in this lesson. So if that's confusing, be sure and leave a comment about that too. Anything I can do to improve what I'm doing, please, again, leave a comment. And yeah, and any questions you have. So keep it locked in right here, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks.